The Orioles were oh so close to winning and even sweeping this series in Pittsburgh. Instead, they dropped 2 out of 3 by the slimmest of margins. I'll recap the weekend coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Orioles fans, today is Monday, April 8th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' 3-game series in Pittsburgh as they dropped 2 out of 3 to the Pirates this weekend. I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from all 3 games: the win on Friday, the tough extra innings loss on Saturday, and then the heartbreaking walk-off loss on Sunday. We'll run through everything that happened this weekend that led to a series that felt like the Orioles should have won, could have even swept, and they ended up on the losing end. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. So the Orioles dropped 2 out of 3 this weekend in Pittsburgh, now 5-4 on the season through 9 games here in 2024. First series loss of the year after they had taken 2 of 3 from both the Angels and the Royals at home to begin the year, and they start their first road series with a series loss. They won 5-2 on Friday, but fell 5-4 in 11 innings on Saturday and lost 3-2 in the 9th on walk-off fashion on Sunday. So let's begin with the big positive from the weekend, and that was the 5-2 win on Friday to kind of spoil the Pirates' home opener and kick off this series with a victory. I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles win on Friday. And the first thing you need to know from that Friday victory is that truly Grayson Rodriguez was really good again in his second start of the year, and even when it snowed on him, it didn't really matter. Now, that second inning was wild on Friday with the snow that came down. Some more came down a little later in the game. Fun weather in Pittsburgh in early April this weekend. But Grayson Rodriguez, I thought, was just really, really stellar again for the Orioles. He pitched into the 7th inning in this game, ends up going 6 1/3, allowing 2 runs on 6 hits with 7 strikeouts and 2 walks. The 2 runs he allowed were just both on solo homers. And home runs can certainly be a problem for a lot of pitchers, but just take a look at Tyler Wells last year. Tyler Wells had a huge home run problem last year, and yet he was still the Orioles' best starting pitcher in the first half. The reason why? He didn't walk guys, he didn't allow a lot of base runners, so when he did give up homers, most of them were solo shots, and you'd rather not give up a home run, but if you're going to give them up, solo home runs don't really hurt you that bad. And that's what happened to Grayson Rodriguez. It was a solo home run in the 5th inning of this game, hit by O'Neal Cruz. It was a solo home run in the 7th inning of this game to lead it off, hit by Jared Triolo. That was basically it for the Pirates offense against him. They did get 6 hits in total, but he kept them from crossing home plate. 97 pitches for Grayson. I thought it was cool that Hyde sent him back out there for the 7th. O's had a 4-1 lead. He gave up a leadoff homer, then got 1 more out and was pulled out of the game, but only 7 hard hit balls against him. I thought the stuff looked good, and it was kind of a different way for Grayson Rodriguez. The fastball velocity was down a little bit. I'm going to guess that had to do with the freezing temperatures and the snow. I mean, he was still sitting 95 to 96 with that 4-seamer, and he still got 9 whiffs on it, still trusted it in the strike zone, on the edge of the strike zone all day. I still thought it was a good fastball day for Grayson Rodriguez. The pitch that really impressed me, though, was the curveball for Grayson. Now, in his first start back in Baltimore against the Angels, that changeup was by far his best secondary pitch. He was getting swings and misses over and over and over again, was striking out a lot of Angels hitters with that one. His changeup was not the same on Friday, I'll say that. It just didn't have the same kind of bite. It was still his 3rd most used pitch, but he didn't get a swing and miss on it, and it just didn't have the same kind of movement. But the curveball kind of filled in for that. Now, he only had 2 whiffs on that curveball. He was dropping that thing into the strike zone basically as much as he wanted. 17 curveballs on the day for Grayson, his 2nd most used pitch. 13 of those 17 curveballs ended up in the strike zone. Now, he kind of used it as a get-me-over pitch at times, but that's okay because I thought the cutter was okay, the changeup was okay, and he threw the sinker a few times as well. The fastball was just so good that he kept the Pirates hitters off balance enough when he would drop that curveball in there and then kind of pitch from behind, first curveball for a strike, then go at him with the fastball. Just really impressive stuff once again from Rodriguez in his second start of the year. Second thing you need to know from the Orioles' 5-2 win on Friday is that Ryan O'Hearn in this one supplied the power and supplied a little bit of the luck. And I had seen some people kind of throwing O'Hearn into a group of players along with Tony Kemp and Jorge Mateo and Ramon Arias and guys where people are like, they're easily replaceable. All these studs from AAA need to come up and replace these guys. Let me tell you right now, Ryan O'Hearn does not belong in the same category with those guys. Ryan O'Hearn is a different level hitter. He showed it all of last year when he was hitting in the middle of the order for a team that won 101 games. And he's showing it again this year. He is, at least early on, through 9 games. Now, he hasn't gotten a lot of chance to play because the Orioles have just seen so many left-handed starters, and they're going to continue, like they did last year, to try and hide O'Hearn from lefties. But even when he's pinch hitting or he gets a start against a righty, he continues to swing the bat well. And that is what he did on Friday. Got the scoring started with a solo home run in the second inning off of Jared Jones, the starter for the Pirates, who, by the way, was looking really, really good. He struck out 10 in his first career start, and then he came back and looked good again on Friday. But O'Hearn got him 104 to deep center field, 389 feet. And then later in the game, he gets a triple. Now, it wasn't because he absolutely smashed a baseball. It's because he hit a deep fly ball. There was miscommunication, and it fell in, and O'Hearn landed on third base. Again, it's just a good reminder that Ryan O'Hearn, not an easily replaceable guy. Yes, sometimes when he plays the outfield, which he does a little bit, he looks a little shaky out there. And Mountcastle is clearly, I think, a better first baseman defensively than O'Hearn is. But at worst, he's one of the best pinch hitters in baseball. And at best, he's in the middle of your lineup against right-handers. This is still a useful piece for the Orioles. Third thing that you need to know from the Orioles win on Friday is that hitting-wise, at least in general, it was a fairly complete day of hitting by the Orioles lineup. 8 of the 9 Orioles starters had a hit in this game. Only Jordan Westberg came out hitless from the people who started the game. They had 12 hits in total in this one, despite only the 5 runs, which we'll get to. But Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Anthony Santander, and Ryan O'Hearn all had 2-hit days. Gunnar Henderson also had himself a solo homer in this one. And Cedric Mullins hit a solo shot later in the game to pad the lead to 5-2, knocked it right off the pole in right field. And I thought it was a pretty balanced attack by the Orioles order in terms of just getting hits and getting on base. But the fourth thing you need to know from the win on Friday is that because of all those hits, the Orioles really should have broken this game open. Now, a win is a win. You win at 5-2. The pitching was great. 5 runs was enough. But the Orioles probably feel they should have scored a lot more. They went 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position in this game on Friday. I mentioned that bloop triple that Ryan O'Hearn had. It was leading off the 4th inning. The O's couldn't even get him home. And you don't even need to hit to get him home, right? Maybe a ground ball in the right place, maybe a fly ball to the outfield. They didn't even get that. They stranded him at third. Mountcastle had a leadoff double in the 6th in that game. He didn't even get to third base, I don't think, in that inning. Like the Orioles, it kind of started a trend of the weekend. They just could not get it done with runners in scoring position. But lucky enough, Grayson Rodriguez was really good. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' lone win this weekend in Pittsburgh is that the bullpen was absolutely nails down the stretch in this game. And that's a big reason why the 5 runs was enough for the O's. It was Danny Coulombe who took over for Grayson Rodriguez with 1 out in the 7th inning and a 4-2 lead. He did his job pretty easily. Cano with a flawless 8th, Craig Kimbrell with a flawless 9th for his first Orioles save. Those 3 out of the pen, which I would say right now are the 3 Orioles go-to high leverage best relievers. They combined to go 2 2/3 innings perfect. That's no hits, no runs, no walks, with 5 strikeouts and only 1 hard hit ball against 3 of them combined. Now, Yennier Cano's velocity was like way down. It was like 3 to 4 miles per hour down on the fastball and the changeup. But maybe you can chalk that up to also the cold as well. And it didn't really matter because he was still just as effective. And the Orioles got that win on Friday. And with the win, they continued their streak of not being swept in the regular season. And they also set themselves up pretty well to win the series because Jared Jones, who started on Friday for Pittsburgh, he was, I think, by far the toughest of the 3 starting pitchers they were going to face. So they won that game, and you felt like the O's are probably getting out of here with a series win. And even after watching the games on Saturday and Sunday, you felt like they still had a good chance. And yet They didn't do it. So coming up next, we'll talk about what happened on Saturday. Now, the O's didn't really deserve to win that game, but they had a chance and then let it slip in extra innings. I'll tell you what happened coming up after this. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Now, we are officially into the baseball season, and you don't want to miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Take your pick of more or less. It's just more or less. That's the only decision you have to make. And then you add them to your Prize Picks entry. And you can also get into the NBA and NHL playoff action and win up to 100 times your money. The NBA playoffs, well, they begin next week. It's coming up soon. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, just download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 at Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So the Orioles started this series in Pittsburgh off strong, winning the first game on Friday by a score of 5-2, but couldn't clinch the series on Saturday. Instead, in a wild back and forth affair, the Orioles fell 5-4 in 11 innings. O'Neal Cruz's walk-off single in the bottom of the 11th won it for the Pirates. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles' loss on Saturday. And the first thing you need to know is it is very, very difficult to win a baseball game when you go 0 for 14 with runners in scoring position as a team. And that is exactly what the Orioles did on Saturday. Now, they still had some good ABs and some good plate appearances with runners in scoring position. That's how they were even able to score 4 runs in this game, despite not getting a hit when there were runners on either second or third base. In the 7th inning, they got a single and a double to start the frame, and then just a couple of solid pieces of hitting. An RBI ground out, an RBI sac fly, went from 3-0 to 3-2, got the Orioles on the board. Then in the 9th inning, Cedric Mullins got just enough of a ground ball. Jordan Westburg had just enough speed to score from third on the contact play and tie the game at 3. And then in the 10th inning, zombie runner starts at second. O's get him to third with 1 out. Adley brings him home on a sac fly to go up 4-3. Like, they still had some solid situational hitting, but at some point you got to come through with an actual hit to continue a rally and maybe make it more than a 1 or a 2-run inning. And the Orioles just did not do that in the game Saturday. Again, 0 for 14 with runners in scoring position. And really the 2 big moments, the one was, they were being no hit, and Jorge Mateo breaks it up with the bloop double to lead off the 6th, and they can't get him home. And then the other one was in the 9th inning. Like, it was great that the Orioles trailed 3-2 going into the 9th. David Bednar, one of the best closers in baseball, comes out of there, and the O's do get a run to continue the game, but they had a real good chance to get 2 runs or more and actually take the lead in the top of that 9th inning and just couldn't come through with it. Colton Cowser grounded out. They got the out at the plate. Tony Kemp ends up ground out, and the Orioles unable to score another run, which they had a really good chance to get to Bednar for multiple runs in that inning. And they just left those chances out there. And again, I mentioned, they got the 1 run in the 10th, but it went to the 11th. And at the very least, right, with the zombie run, you feel like you got to get 1 run. At the very least, you got to get 1 run. You feel like you can at least extend the game. Top of the 11th, O's had nothing, didn't even get 1 run home. And that puts you in a really, really tough spot in extra innings at this point. And you just could have had bigger innings in this one, and it really, really hurt them. I mean, there were other things that went wrong at the end of the game, but that loss is on the offense. 0 for 14 with runners in scoring position, especially for a team that was one of the best teams in baseball, actually the best team in baseball, hitting with runners in scoring position last year. It was a tough swing to watch on Saturday. But the second thing you need to know from the O's Saturday loss is that for some of that struggle that the Orioles had with runners in scoring position, you got to tip your hat to what Bailey Falter did. The left-handed starter for the Pirates on Saturday, I mean, he was fantastic. Went 6 scoreless innings for Pittsburgh, and the only hit he allowed, the hit that broke up his no-hitter, which has still got to hurt for him, was a bloop leadoff double by Jorge Mateo in the 6th inning, which was just a lazy fly ball to shallow right center field. Center fielder, right fielder, second baseman, shortstop. All 4 of them started converging on it. None of them saw it. And it just kind of drops in on a play where if you're a Pirates fan, you wish it's called an error because it kind of was, but by the rule of the law, nobody touched it. Nobody was very near it. That is a double for Jorge Mateo. That broke up the no-hitter. But otherwise, I mean, the Orioles had no answer for Bailey Falter. And Bailey Falter is not like one of these top Pirates pitching prospects. They've got him. Jared Jones is one of them. They saw him on Friday. Paul Skeens in AAA. He'll be in the big leagues soon. He's another one of them. The Pirates even have some guys like Arency Contreras and Luis Ortiz who are now in the bullpen, but at one point were those big prospects. Bailey Falter was a solid pitching prospect for the Phillies at one point, but like that's not who he is. This is more of their number 5 starter trying to hold on to this spot until Paul Skeens come to the big leagues. And he was fantastic. 6 scoreless innings, 1 hit. Now he only had 1 strikeout and 1 walk and only 9 swings and misses. So it wasn't that kind of complete dominance. And his secondaries aren't very good. Like it's a changeup and a slider that nothing fantastic about them. But that fastball is the pitch, and it's not velocity, right? It's 90, 91, like maybe 92 on a good day for Bailey Falter from that left arm. But what he does, and Ben McDonald and Kevin Brown, I think, did a good job of covering this on the broadcast. What he has is elite extension. What extension is basically how far you get down the mound and towards home plate before you release the ball. Now, obviously, Falter is fairly tall. Taller pitchers in general will get better extension, but it's a lot to do with your legs and how much power you push off the mound with. It's not just height. Grayson Rodriguez is in the top 10 in baseball in extension, one of the reasons that he is so good. Bailey Falter is 5th. He's better than Grayson in terms of how much he gets down the mound. So even though he's only throwing 91 miles per hour, it's being released closer to the plate than basically a hitter sees for any other pitcher in baseball. So that's going to up how hard it looks, especially for the hitter. And he has solid rise, the inverted induced vertical break, I should say, on the fastball as well. It's like that invisible that almost goes up instead of going down, it looks like. So you combine those two things and it makes it a really tough fastball to hit. Now, sometimes he struggles to locate it. And because his secondaries aren't very good, that's when Falter has struggled for a good chunk of his big league career with the Phillies and the Pirates. But when he's locating the fastball like he was doing with pinpoint accuracy on Saturday, he can, with basically just throwing the fastball, look that good. And Kevin Brown made a great comparison on the broadcast. He said, and I think it had maybe come from one of the Orioles players that he talked to, but he said he looks exactly like Rays left-handed reliever Colin Poche. And that is a perfect comparison. Poche is a lefty who throws like 92 to 93 for the Rays, but gets crazy extension down the mound, has crazy induced vertical break on the fastball. And he throws like 80% fastballs and guys just pop it up and pop it up and pop it up. And you're like, how are you not hitting this? It's because it's so deceptive. And Falter hides the ball well, and he was locating well. And that's all it was. It was pop-up after pop-up by the Orioles hitters. It was really frustrating, but shout out to Bailey Falter for having that location down. That is why he is in a major league rotation. And on the flip side of that, why in the world did Derek Shelton, the Pirates manager, take him out after 6 innings? He had given up 1 hit, which shouldn't have been a hit, should have been a fly ball that was caught, and he had only thrown 78 pitches for the 6 scoreless. I mean, the Orioles had no answer for them. The fact that he took him out is insane by Derek Shelton, and the O's scored 3 runs off the bullpen to get the game to extras in the final 3 innings. Like, I just don't get it. But on the flip side, for Orioles pitching, for the third thing you need to know from this one is that Tyler Wells, for the second straight start to begin this season, was just very Tyler Wells. It was a very, very Tyler Wells start. This is kind of what, at this point, you can expect from Wells when he goes out there. 5 1/3 innings, 3 runs on 7 hits, 3 Ks, 2 walks, and a homer through 87 pitches, and allowed 7 hard hit balls in this game. It was 2 quick innings in the first, or excuse me, a quick inning in the first. Then he gets hit around in the second, throws a meaty cutter up in the zone to Joey Bart. And in Joey Bart's first at-bat as a Pirate, he hits a 2-run homer to put Pittsburgh up 3-0. And then after that, scoreless third, scoreless fourth, scoreless fifth, gets in a little trouble in the 6th and has to come out of the game. But it's very similar to his first start against the Angels when he gave up 4 runs in the second and then was still able to get through 6 because he really settled down. But Jim Palmer, all of last year, talked a lot about how Tyler Wells had a home run problem. I've already mentioned it on this episode. He gave up a lot of long balls last year. And a lot of those homers came on his cutter. It's not a very good pitch. It's the worst pitch in his arsenal, and it gives up by far the highest slugging percentage of any pitch that he throws. And some of it's a command issue with the cutter. Like, you don't want to be throwing it up in the zone in the middle of the plate like he did to Bart when he gave up the 2-run homer on Saturday. But at some point, you got to think, like, is Wells going to go away from that cutter? It took a while for Kyle Bradish to kind of finally go away from his four-seam fastball that was hurting him so much, mix in more of a two-seamer, throw his slider more than any other pitch, and he became an ace when he did that last season. Let's see how long it takes for Tyler Wells, because that cutter is an issue. And you have to think that maybe Wells just has such good feel for that pitch. He feels like I can throw it for a strike at any time. That makes it really hard to give up on an offering like that you trust so much to throw in the strike zone. But man, you got to at least lower the usage, throw it in different counts, throw it differently, move it around, whatever it may be, because that thing is a home run machine right now. And it got Wells again, but as he usually does, he settled down after that and kept the Orioles in the game. Fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles' walk-off loss in 11 innings on Saturday is that Danny Coulombe absolutely saved the Orioles in that 10th inning. Now, the O's had taken the lead on the Rutschman sac fly in the top of the 10th to go up 4-3, and it was very clear that Yennier Cano was not available. He had already pitched a lot early in the season, and trust me, Brandon Hyde has said it. He does not want him to run down this year like he ran down last year. Craig Kimbrell had already thrown on Friday and had already thrown a scoreless bottom of the ninth to get it to extra innings. And Kimbrell basically hasn't thrown more than one inning in any outing in 4 years. So we know Kimbrell is not going multiple innings pretty much at any time this year. So you're out Cano, you're out Kimbrell, and you're like, what are we going to do to try and save this game? Runner on second, the zombie runner with a 1-run lead in the bottom of the 10th. And Brandon Hyde goes to Mike Baumann. And I'll get to this decision. I didn't like it, right? I'm going to do my bullpen trust rankings probably at some point this week. And right now there's maybe only one guy in the don't trust category, and it is Mike Baumann, because he has not looked good early this year. I understand the thinking somewhat of Baumann being the guy, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But Baumann was just terrible. Once again, he was just bad. He comes out there, gives up a hard hit single, puts runners on the corners, then walks the guy to load the bases, then walks the guy on 3-2 to walk in the tying run. And all of a sudden it's 4-4, bases loaded, nobody out, bottom 10. And you're like, how the O's going to get out of this? Well, in comes Danny Coulombe, who maybe should have been in to start the inning, but we'll get to that again. And Coulombe just comes in, pop out, ground out to third. They get the force out at home, and huge strikeout on a ridiculous curveball to get Joey Bart swinging. Coulombe spinning, jumping in the air off the mound. I mean, what a revelation he's been over the last 2 years for the Orioles, just wiggling out of that danger to push the game to the 11th inning. It's unfortunate the O's lost this game after that performance from Coulombe. You thought, wow, they might win it after this. But I mean, considering they got Danny Coulombe for nothing, he was a waiver pickup a day before opening day last year where the Twins cut him loose. And there's been other amazing finds for the O's, right? Like Cano, but they had to give up Jorge Lopez to get him. Or Kyle Bradish, but they had to give up Dylan Bundy to get him. Or obviously Corbin Burns was a great pickup, but you had to give up real prospects to get him. Considering they give up nothing for Coulombe, if you take that into account, is Danny Coulombe Mike Elias's best pickup ever? He might be. That is how integral he has been to this Orioles team. But it does make you think when he did that, why didn't Coulombe just come in to start the 10th? Now, some of the argument, there's basically two parts to the argument. One is there's righties coming up, right? 2 out of 3 right-handers are coming up, and you'd rather have the righty Baumann than the lefty Coulombe. The hit to that is Danny Coulombe throughout his career has generally been equal to how well he gets righties and lefties out. And even last year, statistically, he was actually a slight bit better against right-handed batters than he was against lefties. He's just good against everybody. The other thing is you really want a strikeout pitcher in extra innings, right? When you're trying to hold a 1-run lead, you're trying to keep that runner from second from scoring. A team can get that run home without a hit. You hit a ground ball to the right side, you hit a fly ball, the game's tied. So you're trying to get strikeouts to keep that runner from advancing to third. And Mike Baumann, despite his struggles, does have strikeout stuff. He's probably in the top half of that bullpen in terms of getting swings and misses for the Orioles. In theory, he just hasn't been doing a lot of that. And when you watch what Coulombe came in and did, bases loaded, no outs, and gets out of it, that means nobody's advancing on Danny Coulombe. And he's got strikeout stuff at times as well. To be fair, he is more of a pitch to soft contact pitcher than a strikeout guy. He's less of a K guy than Mike Baumann is. But I just think at some point you go to Danny Coulombe. Just overall, we all know it. He is a better pitcher than Mike Baumann is. I probably would have gone to him. It is what it is. In terms of the Mike Baumann thing, I mean, this is not going to be like a DFA tomorrow for Mike Baumann. The O's still see something there. But I think this is going to lead to a little bit of a lessening of a role. He's going to be more of a middle relief guy at best for the Orioles. And I do have a take for Baumann right now. I don't think he survives this season in the Orioles bullpen. He is out of options. That's why the O's are holding on to him. He would have to be DFA'd and go through waivers. And someone will certainly claim him. The stuff is still enticing. I don't think he survives the whole season in the Orioles bullpen. I don't see it for Mike Baumann. But it was unfortunate that he struggled like that on Saturday. Great job by Coulombe to come in and get it. And that was really the one decision Brandon Hyde made that I didn't agree with on Saturday. I thought just if Coulombe's ready, he was already warming up earlier in the game. He obviously came in to pitch in the 10th. Just send him out there to close out the game. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' loss Saturday is that otherwise, I thought it was really fun to watch Brandon Hyde manage this game on Saturday. Now, clearly, Yennier Cano was unavailable, and that made it harder to manage, right? Going 11 innings and not having Cano, maybe your best reliever, that is tough. And that's one of the reasons why the Orioles lost this game. But Dylan Tate, Keegan Aiken, Jacob Webb, Craig Kimbrell combined to get 11 outs after Tyler Wells left the game to get this to extras, which was a really good combo from all those guys. Brandon Hyde pushing the right buttons in, the 6th, and the 7th, and 8th, and 9th to get the game to extras. And, Kimbrell does not go 2 innings. You would usually have maybe Félix Bautista going 2 innings, but that changes things a little bit here. And so because Kimbrell doesn't go 2 innings, because Cano was not available, you had used everybody else. So you had to go to Jonathan Heasley in the 11th inning. And that was unfortunate for 2 reasons. One is he's still your least trusted reliever in the bullpen. He's basically your long man right now. And the other thing is, it's unfortunate that the Orioles did not score in the top of the 11th. If at the very least, if they could get the zombie runner home in the top of the 11th, make it 5-4, you take some pressure off Heasley. It's like, all right, just get out of there with only giving up 1 run. Just get us to the 12th. Instead, he's got to be picture perfect. Cedric Mullins helped him with a diving play on the first out, but hard to get O'Neal Cruz out, and he wins it with a walk-off. Now, some people were calling for Cruz to be intentionally walked in that spot, which would have set it up for 1st and 2nd with 1 out. Of course, would have put the double play in order and would have missed facing one of the Pirates' best hitters in O'Neal Cruz, who had a great series. My pushback on that would be this. Cruz is very strikeout prone, despite how good he is. And what you're looking for in those spaces are strikeouts. The next guy up, if you walk him, is Bryan Reynolds. And although Bryan Reynolds, I would honestly argue he's a better hitter than O'Neal Cruz is, but even if you don't think that, Bryan Reynolds is way less susceptible to strike out and way more likely to just dunk a single in somewhere to beat you, and is still a really good hitter. I'd rather try to, in that spot, honestly, try to strike out Cruz because he's very strikeout prone, walk Reynolds, and then face the righty Connor Joe with the righty Heasley out there and try to get out of the inning. I think that was Hyde's plan. You just got to get Cruz to chase, and Cruz got a good pitch to hit and whacked it into right field to win the game. And then the lineup stuff for Hyde, I was really impressed with. He did this a lot of times last year. You want Adley Rutschman, even when he's not catching, to be DHing, and that's what Adley did on Saturday with McCann catching. But that usually means if you're in a close game, McCann not the greatest hitter, you're probably going to pitch hit for James McCann. And Hyde did it perfectly in that 9th inning. He gets O'Hearn in there for Hayes, who had been struggling. O'Hearn delivers a single. He gets Cowser in there for McCann. Unfortunately, Cowser doesn't deliver, but hey, I think Cowser was the better matchup and the better hitter. It just didn't work. And then he gets Tony Kemp in there for Jorge Mateo. Again, that was the better matchup. And the Orioles have still had Jorge Mateo completely avoid facing a right-handed pitcher. It was Bednar, the righty, out there in the 9th. They're going to continue to hide Mateo against righties because he struggles against them. And that one just didn't work out either. But he made all the right moves. He had the bench available. And then people were wondering, okay, why did he put Ryan O'Hearn to stay in the game in left field and take Cowser out of the game? Isn't Cowser the better left fielder? He is, however, by doing that, Hyde had to burn the DH, right? Because McCann comes out of the game. So Adley goes from DH to catcher, which means you no longer have your DH. The pitcher is now in the lineup. And so for O'Hearn to go in, the pitcher takes Cowser's spot, which was due up 8th in the lineup, instead of taking O'Hearn's spot, which would have been 6th. So you basically take out the possibility of the pitcher having to hit in a huge spot in the top of the 10th. And then once the Orioles scored the run in the 10th, Ryan Mountcastle made the final out. Hyde did an even better move where he pulled Mountcastle from the game, put Arias in at 3rd, moved Westberg from 3rd to 2nd, moved Tony Kemp from 2nd to left field, and moved O'Hearn from left field to first base, which made the defense better overall and moved the pitcher spot to where Mountcastle was, which was the final out of the last inning, which means the pitcher's not coming up in the 11th either. It was kind of brilliant managing, and it kind of sent Derek Shelton over the edge. Shelton came out there in the top of the 11th just arguing that Hyde did something illegal, but he didn't. He just knew the rules very well, and I thought it was kind of fun to watch him just mix and match right there with what he did with the O's lineup. Unfortunately, the O's didn't come out with a win on Saturday, but they still had a chance to win the series on Sunday. And they were very close. They were 3 outs away. Really, they were 1 out away, 1 throw away from doing it on Sunday. just couldn't get it done, and a rough walk-off loss on an error on Sunday. I'll recap that one to finish off the pod coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and even easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down as it gets closer to the first pitch. They've got these killer last-minute deals and views from your seat as well. And the last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. If you want to save money on your tickets to Orioles games, just go to Game Time and you get views from all the seats in the venue. Those last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% buying last-minute tickets for the Orioles. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. For a limited time, all users can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Game Time app with code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's code FIRSTPITCH, FIRSTPITCH, for $20 off from March 25th to April 14th only. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the Orioles' tough walk-off loss on Saturday, which, to be fair, the fact that they had one hit off Bailey Falter in 6 innings, it felt like they had no business winning. They almost won it, and they didn't. But they still had a chance to win the series with the rubber match on Sunday. And unfortunately, they couldn't do that, falling 3-2 Sunday as the Pirates walk it off with 2 in the 9th to take the series, and the Orioles drop to 5-4. And I'll finish off the pod today by getting you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles' loss on Sunday. And the first thing you need to know is the Orioles are really at times going to miss Félix Bautista this season. And I would argue they actually missed Bautista more on Saturday in the loss than they did in Sunday's loss, but it was felt in general in both games. On Saturday, Félix Bautista in that spot 4 times last year with the Orioles tied on the road going to extra innings. He would pitch a scoreless bottom of the 9th to keep the game tied. The Orioles would play small ball, get 1 run with the zombie runner in the top of the 10th, and then Bautista would come in and generally just strike out the side in the bottom of the 10th because his stuff is so good, and the Orioles would win by 1. They did that and executed it perfectly 4 different times last year. Saturday was the first time this year without Félix to try to do that. Craig Kimbrell is just not going to go 2 innings. I've already talked about it. He gets the scoreless bottom of the 9th, and then the O's make the one decision I didn't agree with. They go with Baumann, and it just does not work out. So they missed Félix there. And then Sunday, you get yourself in a safe situation. Now, if we were saying Félix were available this year, and he did what he did on Saturday, he wouldn't have been available Sunday anyway. I don't think any of the times Félix did that last year where he pitched the 2 innings, I think he was unavailable for the day after every single time. And remember, Friday's win was also a save scenario. Kimbrell got the save Friday. Félix probably would have pitched in that spot too, so he definitely would not have pitched on Sunday. Either way, no matter who you replace Félix Bautista with, in this example, it's Craig Kimbrell, your bullpen is going to get worse because Félix Bautista, in my opinion, when healthy, is the best reliever in baseball. So no matter who you replace the best reliever in baseball with, even if it's the second best reliever in baseball, which Kimbrell isn't, your bullpen's going to get worse. And that's the spot the Orioles are in right now. Now, again, you probably wouldn't have had him Sunday anyway, but overall, I think the loss Saturday, blowing the save there, and really the blown save Sunday, because it's not like, you blew it with the zombie runner on second, like you come in with a 2-1 lead and a clean inning, and it just kind of falls apart on you. It's just what happens. I mean, when you don't have Félix, every 9th inning is going to be tougher. And again, like Yennier Cano came in for the save 2-1. He had been great all year. He didn't pitch Saturday, which you would hope, okay, that would have been a spot to use him. He wasn't available. That means he should be rested and ready to go to get the save Sunday. It came up and he just didn't have it. Just absolutely did not have it. Gives up back-to-back singles to start the inning. He loads the bases with nobody out with a walk, and you're like, where's Danny Coulombe? Well, Coulombe had pitched Friday and Saturday. He wasn't going to be able to do that again. It was all on Cano. Did a good job getting the first out at home plate, which, just taking a side here, that out at home plate in the bottom of the 9th, the short grounder to Mountcastle where he threw it home, I mean, was clearly an out. Dan Iasonia, the home plate umpire, called him safe. What was Dan Iasonia looking at? I mean, he was out by a mile. That was the quickest review I have ever seen. They go to review, and I swear, before Masson even had a chance to show another replay, you heard the announcement over the loudspeaker, we have changed the call, the runner is out at the plate. Like, that was one of the worst missed calls I've ever seen. Didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things of what happened in the game, just that was unreal that he called that play safe. I don't know what Dan Heisen was looking at, what he was thinking. That was horrendous. But either way, Cano gets that ground out. And, it's tough because Félix Bautista even got himself into some of those spots last year, loading the bases, but his strikeout stuff is so good, he can just escape it with the strikeouts. That's not Cano's game. He gets strikeouts, don't get me wrong, but he is a pitch-to-contact ground ball pitcher, which makes it tougher for him to just be a closer in general. You want your closer to be a big-time strikeout guy like Félix, like Craig Kimbrell, but Kimbrell was not available either on Sunday after pitching Friday and Saturday. Cano just didn't have it. And he gets the ground ball with the bases loaded and 1 out. You're thinking, this could be a double play that ends the game. Is he going to sneak out of this? Are the Orioles back-to-back days going to get out of bases loaded, no outs at the end of the game? But unfortunately, the second thing you need to know from Sunday is that Gunnar Henderson just had a day to forget. Of course, the play we're going to remember is what happened in the bottom of the ninth. Henderson dives, fields the ground ball, touches second for the first out, tries to fire it over to first base to complete the double play, and it was just a bad throw. He had a chance to get him. He just kind of zings it wide, and unfortunately, to make bad things worse, it sails into the stands, goes out of play, allowing the runner that was on second to automatically score, which means 2 runs score on the play, and the Pirates win it 3-2, inches away from completing the double play and the O's winning. Instead, they get walked off on. And I have no issue with Gunnar Henderson making that throw. I saw some people saying he should have just ate it, let the game be tied, take the second out, and hope Cano can get the next guy. No. He had a chance with a good throw, and he's got a great arm, to make that out at first and end the game and win the game right there. If you have a chance to win the game, you go for it. And Gunnar said that after the game. I'm always trying to play aggressive. We're trying to play aggressive. That's what I was trying to do. Brandon Hyde fully supported him making that throw. Just plain and simple, it was a bad throw. Mountcastle just had no way to even knock it down. And it is what it is. It was also a bad day at the plate for Gunnar. Went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. The lefties, Jose Hernandez, and the starter, Marco Gonzalez, for the Pirates, just had him in all twisted up. Like, he did not look good at the plate. But again, Gunnar Henderson, you're going to take the bad. It doesn't come often, but you're going to take it because the good is so good. Just unfortunately for him, a rough day in the loss on Sunday. And third thing you need to know from that Sunday loss is that the Orioles did finally get a hit with a runner in scoring position, but not much else offensively in this game. And I know the title of this episode says the Orioles really miss Félix Bautista, and they do. They blew a save Saturday. They blew a save Sunday. You're going to miss the best closer in baseball when that happens. But the real culprit of the Orioles losing this series this weekend was the offense. I mean, they go 0 for 14 with runners in scoring position Saturday. They finally get a hit. They started a rally on Sunday in the 4th inning against Marco Gonzalez. Didn't have a run so far. Adley crushes a single. Mountcastle crushes an RBI double, who also had 2 doubles and 3 hard hit balls in this game. Puts the O's up 1-0. Santander drills an RBI single up the middle to make it 2-0. And you're like, all right, here comes a rally. And that Santander hit was the O's first hit in a while with a runner in scoring position. And then Austin Hayes completely kills the rally by grounding into a double play. And the Orioles just, once again, yeah, it was nice to get that hit, but those were the only runs. Those 2 runs in the 4th inning with that mini rally, that was it. And really, they never even had many other chances to score. That was the only inning where more than one Oriole reached base. They just didn't have anything going offensively. They were holding on to that 2-0 lead, then 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. They just never added on to it. And it came back to bite them. And speaking of Hayes grounding into that double play to end the rally, the fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles' loss on Sunday in walk-off fashion is that I'm starting to get pretty concerned with Austin Hayes. Now, I know it's only 9 games into the season. That's what I've been telling most people. Hey, the Orioles are 5-4. If you win 5 out of every 9 games all year, you end up winning 90 games. 90 wins gets you into the playoffs. That is good enough to have a chance to win the World Series. So let's relax. They've lost 1 series. It's okay. And again, it's only 29 plate appearances for Austin Hayes. That is a very, very small sample size in the first week and change of the season. But he does not look good at all. It's not just that the stats aren't good. In his 29 plate appearances this year so far, Hayes has 2 hits, both singles, no extra base hits, only 3 hard hit balls, a lot of grounders. The grounders have been an issue for him, especially when he struggled in the second half last year after a great first half and making the All-Star team, just beating the ball into the ground. But at least sometimes he was hitting the ball hard. That's not happening right now. And that is concerning. 3 hard hit balls in 29 plate appearances is not good. It is not good. And a couple of them have been ground balls, hard hit ground balls, which still don't do a lot for you. He looks lost. He looks a little injured. He's way off timing wise. Ben McDonald was talking about it on the broadcast. Like, he's just way out in front of the ball. He's just been a disaster. And I know he was bad down the stretch last year, But this stretch is even worse than at any time he looked in the second half last season. Like, it's gotten even worse for Austin Hays, and he's still playing a good defensive left field, and that still brings value to the Orioles. But man, oh man, like, he looks rough at the plate right now. And hopefully he turned it around, right? They're not going to give up on him now that he's got plenty of chances to turn it around. But it's interesting because Cowser has looked good in, less playing time. He's had some better at-bats. And we know that Heston Kjerstad and Kyle Stowers are absolutely on fire, along with the rest of the Norfolk Tides down in AAA, and both are on the 40-man roster and could help out this lineup. Even Peyton Burdick's putting up some insane numbers as another outfielder in AAA that's on the 40-man. And it's not time to make a move yet. Like, the Orioles aren't going to do that, but I'm interested to see what the Orioles do in this upcoming series against the Red Sox. Orioles are off today, then start a 3-game series at Fenway against the Sox Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And the Orioles have seen an insane amount of left-handed starters. It has been 9 games so far, and I believe that is now 6 left-handed starters they've seen. That's kind of unheard of. They will see all 3 right-handed starters against the Red Sox. Now, so far, between Cowser and Hays in left field, the Orioles have basically done just a straight-up platoon. They have Cowser in there hitting against most of the righties. They have Hays in there hitting against most of the lefties. Hasn't been perfect down the middle, but that's mostly what it's been. But because the O's have seen so many lefties, it's allowed them to play Hays most of the time because there's just been so many lefties out there. And, that's what Hays would want, being the veteran. Now, for the first time, they're going to see back-to-back righties. They're going to see 3 righties in a row. I'm interested to see what they do with this lineup. Now, I don't think it's going to be just Cowser out there all 3 games. We don't see any Hays. Austin Hays will definitely start at least one of the 3 games against the righties. But I'll be interested to see, like, what if he does only start one and Cowser starts the other 2, right? Like, that's certainly something that could happen here because Cowser's just giving him the better bat right now. And their playing time split in this 3-game series for a Red Sox team that has a lot of righties that they're pitching, and it's mostly righties in that Red Sox bullpen as well. Like, the O's aren't going to see a lot of left-handed arms in this 3-game series. That would mean it's probably a big spot for Colton Cowser. It's going to be really interesting to see what these lineups, what this playing time looks like. This 3-game series could tell us a lot about how the O's feel about Cowser and Hays right now at this point in the season. But the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Sunday game, it basically kind of sums up to this. The Orioles wasted a fantastic Dean Kremer start in this loss on Sunday. Yeah, Cano faltered out of the bullpen, but really it's the offense just not doing anything. And Kremer did everything he could except for throw the ball correctly to second base. Otherwise, Dean Kremer was great in this one. Second start of the year, 7 scoreless, 5 hits. The 1 run was unearned, 6 Ks, no walks, 91 pitches, just 5 hard hit balls against him. The only run that scored was a runner on first with 1 out in the 5th, gets a ground ball hit right back to him. He turns it around, should be an easy throw to second for a double play to end the inning. Instead, pretty bad throw to Jorge Mateo, just spikes it at his ankles. It goes into center field. It extends the inning. They end up getting a sac fly to make it 2-1. Kremer does rightfully get himself out of the inning and keep the lead. Now, I think that an error on the pitcher should still be an earned run, but for now, it's an unearned run for Dean Kremer. Either way, thought he was really good, mixed the pitch as well. Fastball velocity was right around where we're used to seeing it. He threw a lot of cutters, but the cutters looked good. Didn't get a lot of whiffs, though, just 8. But the whiff pitch was what Baseball Savant is now calling a splitter. It's always been called a changeup for Dean Kremer, but this year that changeup has been qualified as a splitter via StatCast, and it was pretty good. 6 whiffs on 13 swings. That was a swing and miss pitch. It's usually a pitch he throws a lot to lefties. He threw it a lot to right-handers in that Pirates lineup as well. Through 22 of them, it was the 2nd most used pitch. Rarely in his career has he thrown more changeups / splitters in any one start than he did on Sunday. So certainly something to look for is maybe Dean Kremer has kind of gotten better at another weapon with that splitter that he's throwing. And that could push him over the edge this year. But I just thought really, really good stuff from Dean Kremer in that start Sunday. And unfortunately, the Orioles did waste it. But that'll finally do it for this episode. Thank you for jumping in. We're going 10 plus minutes over what we usually go, but the O's had a fun win Friday. And then I think there was a lot to dissect in the losses Saturday and Sunday. And I think the timing of this episode kind of reveals how much there was to dissect. But we're still talking a lot more Orioles baseball. O's are off today, but we are not off on the podcast. Back here tomorrow. Might answer some mailbag questions. So if you want to send them in via email, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. put them in the YouTube comments right here. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube page, or you can tweet me at Locked On Orioles with your mailbag questions. We'll talk a little bit about the first week and change of the season, answer some questions coming up on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I am Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.